Hello and welcome to Roundtable. Today I'm delighted to be joined by 4 of the artists that Unity Theatre supported through their Open Call fundraiser last year. The Open Call programme was set up to support artists impacted by a pandemic. But throughout the year that we've been working with as artists, what we've found is that the pandemic and the issues it has caused and created have not yet ended. And so today I'm delighted to be joined by 4 of them to discuss what they learnt in that year working through a pandemic and the advice that they'd give to 2022 applicants. Tom.
Hiya, I'm Tom. I was one of the Open Call artists last year. I'm a writer, and I had a play on that. It was a rehearsed reading, the first time it had been in front of an audience. It was a play about a love story, kind of about OCD, I'm a writer. I currently work at Coronation Street as a storyliner, which has been fun. And the Open Call was brilliant.
Amazing. Thank you.
I'm Leianna, and I have worked with Unity for Open Call and through a monologue book called Hear Me Now Volume 2, which was in conjunction with Tamasha Theatre Company. But through Open Call, I was able to, my show had been on before, The Weight of Repopulated Nation. But then with Open Call, I was able to really refine it, get back in the room with the director, put it on. It was able to be recorded. And the Unity have just helped me from the start until now. Carrying on from now.
Amazing. Fab, thank you.
Hi, I'm Becky. I'm also usually joined by Jess, and our company is called Flood Theatre. We applied for the Open Call last year, basically because we wanted to make a piece about loneliness and kind of connect people through something creative. And so we've been doing that. We actually haven't had our show yet. We're still we're at the dregs of the Open Call probably. But no, and I'm a writer, actor, producer, and I don't know what.
That's great.
Yeah,
Amazing.
I'm Sian, and I am a stand-up comedian, and my show, Sian Davies About Time, was part of the Open Call. It was on, I think, about May here at Unity. And for me, I was in a position where my show was already written. It was sort of on a trajectory where it was on its way to Edinburgh Fringe. It had just won Best Debut at Leicester Comedy Festival. So it was going to do good things. Then we had a pandemic, so I was hugely impacted by that, obviously. Being part of Unity gave me the opportunity to continue refining the show, keep it fresh, perform it in front of a full audience, and just keep it ticking over to hopefully pick it back up again as it's Leicester Comedy Festival again this weekend, and I'm going to do my show there again.
Amazing.
So that's me. That's where I'm at.
That's great. I think, when we decided to do an open call out, there was a couple of reasons, really. One, it was our way of trying to get income back over to artists, but also, when a venue programs, it sometimes can be a reflection of one person's taste, and the pandemic for us as a venue kind of opened up that opportunity. It was a bit like a blank canvas, really. So what I'm really interested to hear today from the 4 of you as we begin applications for 2022, and we're encouraging more artists to apply, is really your experience. What initially made you apply? Because that period of time, it was December 2020 to March 2021 that applications were open, and we were still in a huge period of uncertainty, given we were calling it our reopening campaign. And I think, first off, I'm just really interested to hear what it felt like going through that application process of shows after kind of a year of industry closure, really. So does anyone have any thoughts on that kind of thing?
Were you in that?
That was really weird. Because we haven't really. It was quite a strange year for thinking about it was quite strange not seeing shows online and things, but I think for me as a writer, it's often being in the room and seeing plays that makes you quite creative and makes you think, I want to write things about this or that. And so it felt quite strange, I guess, feeling like I don't actually know if this is going to get put on. Like, I don't know if my play will ever see the light of day, I guess, at the time. And yeah, I mean, even through the process, it was still strange, like kind of fingers crossed that some new variant wasn't going to come and ruin what was like a nice ray of sunshine during that time. But yeah, it was quite weird.
Definitely. How did you find it?
Well, I think for me, because I knew I wanted my show The Wait to have a new life and to be on again. And I never, because it was part of like the Liverpool Fringe and little bits and bobs, the Unity was the first sort of thing that I seen that were, for me anyway, especially being local, that was reaching out and being like, you know, you can apply for this, we'll support you with your work. And that's what it felt like. It felt like the Unity were really trying to just support artists. That's what you were trying to do. So applying for it, I just felt that excited because it gave us something creative to think was going to happen. And, you know, so it was like sort of light at the end of the tunnel to be like, so I was working part-time throughout in education. So for me, this was like, okay, this is, you know, something creative we're going to do again. Do you know what I mean?
Definitely. Yeah, and I think, you know, from both of your perspectives, I think the audience is quite an important part because comedy, you know, without an audience, but then also yours is quite participatory in how it's been developed. So, you know, how did that feel from your perspective, pitching ideas for the open call that, you know, were so reliant on an audience that hadn't seen anything for two years?
Well, that's it. I think, like, even in terms of what I was doing as a creative during the whole of lockdown, you know, we were doing gigs from our living room. We were still performing, but it was like, you know, you've got to wait a couple of seconds longer to get any kind of feedback. You don't know if people are laughing, are their mics on, what's happening, someone's Wi-Fi's gone, the whole gig's gone down, and it was like this every weekend. And then things would open up and they, you know, it'd be like, oh great, I've got a gig, and then the next minute that'd get pulled, and it was constantly like, are we, aren't we, isn't it, like what's happening? And then I think, like you say, with comedy, you need an audience. You know, you can't just monologue a stand-up show to camera. It doesn't work that way. So just the thing of actually feeling like, well, if I apply to this, I might actually get to be in a theatre and do a full thing. But I think as well for me, it was like, the reason I applied was it was almost like a perfect storm of the Arts Council recognising comedy as an art form. That that sort of helped because until the pandemic we weren't an art form, and then they sort of said, oh, actually, yeah, you are. So there was a bit more support from mainstream theatre organisations reaching out to comedy, and I think
I didn't know that.
Yeah. We basically the Arts Council viewed the comedy as like not an art form, as in you can't get Arts Council funding unless you're doing something very experimental and different, you know. So yeah, it was sort of seen as that, like, but once they recognised it in terms of getting people funding when the pandemic hit, it was like that kind of opened up some doors, I think, into more mainstream theatre. And then when I saw the open call, a lot of the time I will see things for theatres and I'll look, and unless it explicitly says anything about comedy, I think, well, they probably don't want comedians. But on the open call thing, it said, and comedy, and I was like, that could work. And I think the main reason I applied was I thought, I probably won't get this, but you were offering £150 to write the second application. And I thought, I'd probably tick enough boxes to get through to that round, and 150 quid's better than nothing. So I applied.
I think that was a really important part of the decision, really, because people had worked for so long without money. And all we were hearing from artists when we did like check-ins with those that were already kind of who we work with regularly was they were just endlessly applying. And, you know, that is part of the job of being an artist, is seeking opportunity. But if it's part of the job, really, you should be paid for it.
It is true.
Because, you know, the return on investment really for time as an artist, if 1 of 10 comes off, you just about make your money back, really. So, you know, that was a big thing for us, making sure that, you know, people can apply with a really small amount of time investment so that then we can support them.
I similarly, I don't think I would have applied without, I think because you get so, I think, you know, not everyone's got loads of confidence in themselves, and I think there's just that sort of thing of like, do I really want to spend all this time filling something out that I like think I probably won't get anyway? And so there's just this sort of thing of, I think it was quite, you know, it was quite brief, the initial thing, which is great. So it was just like, oh well, you know, if that gets rejected, then fine. But then there's, you know, once you do, that's brilliant.
Definitely.
You actually get reimbursed for your time.
Yeah, I think it also speaks volumes, like, to not just the climate that we're in now, but like the climate of the arts generally. Like, I feel like a lot of arts across, well, nationwide and you know, and further, is so inaccessible.
Yeah.
Because it's geared towards like middle class, upper class people. So even just as simple as like, okay, well, you know, we recognise that this application is going to take, you know, a couple of days maybe to get it perfect. Or, well, if you're like me, I'm like, and like, you know, that's like, okay, well, that's a chunk of money where if I do need to rearrange my freelance work, or if I do need to accommodate that with, you know, childcare or whatever, like I can do that, and that kind of provides, you know, like 150 quid, like if you've got a child and you're like, okay, I can focus on this and stuff like that. So it's that kind of consideration I think is really important, that doesn't get thought about in so many places. Like, I don't know about you, but the amount of times I've done an application that's took me like forever, and then I've not even had an email back.
Yeah.
This is it. Look, you know, when you look at a venue, you've usually got someone whose job it is to be the marketer, someone whose job it is to raise the money, someone whose job it is to program to get it on sale. You're all of that, like, for yourselves. And I think, you know, really that was a huge learning, I think, for venues in the pandemic, was, you know, the grafting, and you act as producer, marketer, performer, writer, director, researcher.
So many slashes.
This is it. I mean, someone, who was it? Yeah. Someone on Twitter in the pandemic said something ridiculous, like, I really hate Twitter bios with a long list of things that everybody does, like writer, producer, director. But I love that, because I think people need to know how much artists do. Because I mean, I think your application was really interesting, because you were applying as a company developing work. It wasn't made pre-pandemic, ready to go. And you know, what was that like for you, actually working on a show that was kind of a bit more long term?
I mean, terrifying.
Yeah.
But in like a really good way. Like, I think, to be honest, the show and the concept for the piece definitely was massively influenced by sort of like the emotional impact that the pandemic had on not just me and Jess, but just kind of everybody who we were speaking to. And as a company, we were doing a lot more outreach stuff and a lot of like online Zoom stuff and things like that. I mean, it started with so obviously I'm a queer person, and immediately when you go into lockdown, it's like, okay, all of the queer spaces are gone because they're all nightclubs. Yeah. They're all like art spaces, and that's it. There's nothing. And so your whole community just disappears like overnight. And, you know, and if that's kind of like, you know, social ease, and, you know, I had to move back in with my parents and stuff. And so you don't have access to those type of people that you normally would, just, you know, to feel comfortable and stuff. So it was really important to us to kind of like, we wanted to use it as an opportunity to just really connect and kind of like just meet people and just sort of like talk about the big stuff. So I mean, it was quite daunting doing the application, because I remember doing it and thinking like, am I just blagging this, or is this like or is this, you know, is this
Don't tell them.
But I suppose the idea and the concept was just from this place of like passion and love. So it was true to us, even if it has like changed in terms of like the format of it or whatever over time, which everything is bound to do, because it's, you know, it progresses, doesn't it? And even if you have a run somewhere, you go and do a run somewhere else, and you think, oh, actually, let's adapt that bit, let's cut that, so nothing's ever the same. It's, you know, the ephemeral nature of theatre. Oh God, I just can't believe I just said that.
I love that. No, it's great. I love it. It's great.
So it was daunting, but it was also really exciting. And I think what was good about the application was that it really let you feel supported in those ideas. And a lot of time, like, organisations and buildings in particular aren't willing to take that risk with you as artists, especially if you're, you know, emerging artists, or you haven't done like massive runs before, or you've only done fringe things or whatever. It's tough. So.
And also like seen and heard as well, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So when people read your application and take time to sort of give that feedback, no matter what that sort of is, or
totally. It's not just like, you know, oh great, okay, we've got it, let's get on it. It's all of the other elements to that, like, oh, we like where this bit is, we like where this has come from. So even if you didn't get it, you get the feedback so that next time you know what to do with it, and you learn by, you know, mistakes or,
Definitely. Yeah, and I think, I really relate to what you said there about feeling like you're blagging it, and I think that's, I think everybody feels like they're blagging it, but like, definitely more so in that time, because no one had ever done it before. Like, we were just living each day thinking it was going to be the end of it in a couple of weeks, and it became months. And I think, that's one of the reasons why it's such a short application, really, is because you feel like you can take a bit of a gamble, even if you do feel like you're blagging it, which probably nobody is. It is that horrible feeling of imposter syndrome, I guess. But I think a lot of people would relate to that. And I think it's interesting for you because you've not had the audience side of it yet. Whereas, you might be. And watch this space. We'll edit it back in if you...
Find out if she is blagging it, get tickets to the show.
So, go on. So what was it like that? Was the Unity run for you the first time you had that audience live in venue again, or did you test it a bit in between lockdown?
For the full show, I'd done bits and bobs of because obviously the show's just over an hour. I'd done bits and bobs of 20-minute sets and things, and just trying to remember it, because it's the show itself isn't part of the bits from it aren't part of my normal stand-up set.
Right.
So it's even though I was doing Zoom gigs and things like that, I wasn't doing that material. So I did an awful lot of pacing up and down in my living room and stuff, because it's one of those things when I apply for open call, it's do you need rehearsal space, do you need this? But being really honest, as a one-person stand-up comedian who just uses a mic and a stand, I don't really need to be in a theatre space doing that. I could just move my dining table. Fine, it's not a problem. So I did an awful lot of pacing up and down and moving things or whatever, and I did a few different little open mics and stuff like that, just to try and get back into the swing of things and remember it, and then it all starts coming back, doesn't it? And you're like, oh yeah, that was a bit, but getting in front of proper audience was unbelievable. And I was slightly concerned in that it was still a socially distanced audience at that point. That was sort of where we were at. So I was thinking, people were sat together in their family groups, but there were spaces in between them and things. And based on that, it was quite full, considering. I think it was full. I don't think there was any spaces except for the distance spaces. But I was worried, because sometimes within comedy, if you're not packed in tightly, you can really feel it. But I think because of it being a theatre venue, and because of the lights, the audience is sort of darkened and everything, as soon as lights went down, you just couldn't tell at all. It was just, it felt like a full audience, and they were ready for it. They were so ready. I had because of the budget and stuff that I was given, I was able to get another comedian, Tom May, who is absolutely fantastic, to come up and do an opening spot for me. So he sort of warmed them up really nicely, and then we had a little break, and then I came on. So it was they were so primed and ready, and you could tell with the audience they were really, really waiting for just to see something and just engage with it, because it was one of the first things.
It was really early. It was the first weekend,
Yeah, and it was they just wanted it. They really did want it, and every joke, everything. You could see them leaning forwards in the seats and engaging, and it was beautiful.
Definitely, because you were that first weekend. There was 3 shows, one after each other, so it really was. We'd never done a socially distanced auditorium before, so we didn't know what the vibe would be like for you. And then I guess by contrast, you two were part of a weekend that was our first slightly more audiences. The bar was back open, so you kind of came on the journey to get to your weekend, which was the up next weekender, which was a showcase of kind of newer work, as it were. And I remember that audience was remarkable, because they moved between all of your shows, and they were so up for it. And both of yours were slightly more developed in the sense you had cast and you had kind of a bit more set. So, what was that like? Because I bet that was quite quick from restrictions lifting to having to get those people in place.
I think one of the nicest bits, I think, obviously just seeing the show was amazing, and getting to sit in and stuff, but just the the theatre bar. Like, I don't think, like, just seeing, like, an actual, like...
We had drinks named
Yeah, we had
after
drinks
us.
named
I
after us.
didn't realise until Tom posted a picture of it, and I was like, oh.
But yeah, I don't know, there was just something about that you just, like, you forgot that that's, like, a thing. You know, like a busy sort of vibrant people, because there were shows back to back.
Yeah.
You know, there were people there in between who were chatting about the show before, and it was just like a really nice, like, oh, okay, I'd forgotten about this, and you know, that's actually a really lovely thing that sort of you sort of forget those kind of things that like you sort of, you know, those in-betweeny bits that like are actually just as important. You know, when I go to see a play or a stand-up gig, you know, it's I actually enjoyed just as much the pint afterwards and chatting it through. So it's really nice to just see, like, you know, actually people in a bar.
And had you heard your words back at you before that weekend with an audience also listening along?
I had seen a scene like
okay.
from that, so like a really earlier version of that play. There was at the Playhouse studio. There'd been a little bit, but that was the first time I'd seen the full thing.
Wow.
And yeah, it was really nice. Yeah,
Amazing.
Especially because I don't know, maybe I'm just was quite negative during lockdown. But I think, you know, there was quite a few times I was like, what is the point of doing this a little bit? But like, you know, you sort of like, why am I writing stuff that like, you know, because especially because it was a play that I'd written bits of before lockdown. It was like, does this even matter to people anymore? I don't know. So it was just really nice to just see it and be like, oh, actually, like,
it was great. And then how was it for you giving a second life to a show that had ran before? Because, you know, did the audiences feel different following the pandemic, or how was that for you?
It was weird, I forgot to say before as well, because people will be like, she hasn't said what she is. So I'm like, I'm a writer performer. So it's like, I was in my show, I wrote my show.
Yeah.
For me, it was weird, because like Tom said, I didn't think it was going to happen. There's so many things you have got planned and you don't think it's going to happen. And even leading up, rehearsing, I think we've got used to being so adaptable to change, haven't we? Because like 1 minute it's like, oh no, you can't use this rehearsal space because, I don't know, it's getting fogged or something's happening in the building. So that was all tough. And then I think the beauty of the show of me only being in it is the fact that it's sort of scary because it's on you if you sort of, I don't know, were to get something or whatever. But then having the audience actually in and sit there, it's just like, it was the nicest feeling to be part and back of it and be like, okay, this was, do you know what I mean? This is what we all kind of sort of, this is what we're about. So I think having another life and being supported, because I remember early on with the Unity, like the fact it was sort of like, oh, what do you need? Like, you know, you're saying about rehearsal space, all this stuff, and that's something, you know, Liverpool's so warm and so lovely, all the creative spaces, but it was that thing of it was nurturing us, I suppose, as artists, and it was more like, you know, how can we help you? You're not just like, okay, this is your show, you know, sort of do it. I was like, wow, okay. So now, like, I just email you all the time, like, can you help me with that?
I love it. I think, you know, you touch on a really good point there, because the open call is for Merseyside-based artists, and, you know, one of the joys of it being an open application was we learnt about so many more artists either based in Merseyside or from Merseyside living elsewhere, and that was just a real joy for us, because you can get a little bit within a circle at times, and it's really important to push beyond that and experience new people. And, you know, I'm interested to hear what you all think of Liverpool in general as like an art city, and crucially really, what kind of Liverpool art scene do you want as we emerge from all this? We're continuing to emerge from it feels like. But, you know, as we develop and we learn from all the points of the last year about bringing audiences, bringing artists back, you know, does anyone have any kind of thoughts around Liverpool as a wider city for supporting artists? Because I think that's a really interesting thing to touch upon.
Well, I think for me and Tom, because we were part of the Playwrights programme, that's how we met. And then, like, now we're best friends when he replies to me. So we've sort of been supported through Unity, through the Ev, and for us, I do feel like it is that thing of sort of, once you put yourself out there, even if it's not being part of a programme, you go and see each other's work, you connect this way. Everyone's so supportive and wanting to get involved. You sort of, even if you help someone on a show, then they'll help you out on this show. And I do feel like that's sort of so mega in Liverpool, how everyone as artists come together. But then the other point of sort of saying what what was the question about, like, Liverpool?
How does it grow and how does it support from here?
So what I feel like's dead important to, like, with what the Unity have done, it is that thing of wanting to sort of nurture us as artists and seeing our progression. So using me as an example. So then after sort of the open call, then, you know, putting my new show to you guys and saying, yeah, we're interested in putting it on in the summer. That's like hopefully the next step in my sort of writer-performer career, because I've done it through the open call, and then now my show's sort of being on the Unity. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's sort of like, if everyone sort of takes a, you know, a leap out of that book of sort of helping emerging artists and supporting them, and also then once the sort of programs happens, it's the fact of you guys checking in, like, what are you doing next, stuff like this, and, you know, so we're always like not sort of pushed but helped and nurtured to sort of move on with our career and the next stages of it, really.
Definitely. How about you two? Because I think it is obviously important to continue to promote Liverpool talent nationally as well, and you mentioned earlier that you know, Leicester Comedy Festival is that kind of thing. How do you feel Liverpool is represented on those kind of circuits?
I think that within the comedy industry, it's different than the sort of theatre side of things, and I think that, you know, it's important to recognise that you know, Liverpool has a really thriving and great comedy sort of scene. There's, you know, lots of big clubs, there's also lots of little open mic nights and stuff, there's lots and lots of things going on, but there's also that thing of just sort of bridging the thing into theatre as well, and that, you know, comedy does happen in theatre spaces, and that some you know, particular audiences and particular people might be more suited to more of a theatre crowd than a comedy club crowd. Audiences might feel more comfortable within a theatre than they might feel within a comedy club, and it's just sort of recognising that. And you know, I think that some theatres will programme comedy, and that's great, some don't, and it's sort of just, you know, it's working out why and what. And I think for my own practice, it's like sort of knowing that actually I can work in those comedy clubs and those mainstream rooms and those sort of bear pit kind of environments. I can do that, but also I can do the theatres as well, and I actually probably feel more at home on like a longer sort of narrative based journey of a show than just sort of doing a Saturday night 20-minute spot. So I think that sort of doing the open call has helped me realise that myself.
Amazing.
And I think in terms of like within Liverpool, I think you know, it's just sort of for me finding out about that, and finding those spaces, and finding like through the open call, and also through some bits that I've done for Homotopia as well.
Oh, great,
just sort of having the more theatre side of it like opened up to me, and meeting other people and like networking with other people and being like, oh my god, I didn't realise that was going on, or like wow, even like, you know, with the open call, like there was a few things and I was like, god, I'm gonna go and see that. Whereas like, you know, I wouldn't have even thought of it. So I think just being like taken under the wing of a theatre and being shown a whole new world of things. So
that's great. And then from a company perspective, it must be quite interesting for you in kind of working and creating a company from like scratch is a really kind of brave thing to do anyway, but also to be doing it now. So what's like that journey been like for you?
I mean, it's been dead hard.
Yeah. That was a leading question. It would have been a straight, it was easy.
It's really hard. Like we're about how old are we now? I think we're about 2.5 now. And that first year, well, it was strange as well for me and Jess, because we went to university together, but a couple of years apart, and then we bumped into each other again, going for the same job, which was mad. And then just like basically became like really good friends, and we were like, we should just make some work together. We were sort of both at a point where like I'd been in London and auditioning and all that stuff, which, you know, some people really love, but I just, it wasn't really for me, and I was getting like a lot of things where I'd get seen for stuff that was like, oh yeah, well you can be the comedy one because you're Scouse, or, you know, you can be like that kind of thing, or so you sort of, because of the way that you sound, and, you know, maybe that kind of like class assumption, and that you do get kind of tokenised. There's so much that you could say about tokenisation. To be honest.
That'll be roundtable number 3.
But with the idea behind the company was we just really wanted to like make stuff and put that effort into something that we were really passionate about, and not just like spend, you know, however many hours like practicing for a toothpaste commercial sort of thing. And, you know, some people are great at that, some people love that, but for me and for Jess, it was about like that engagement, not just with people, but I think with Liverpool as a city as well, and like I don't know, I think there's a freedom, it's quite stressful making your own work, as everybody knows, but there is a freedom there that's quite beautiful, and I think there's like definitely a confidence that's come out in both of us from being able to do that and kind of taking that control, even in the face of the pandemic, because we were a pandemic baby company.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Yeah. I love that.
But yeah, and like that's why, you know, stuff like this is so great. And I do think Liverpool's changed loads in like the last 5 years, because I mean, one of the reasons I moved away is because I just kind of felt like I couldn't really get a look in anywhere, and I couldn't, you know, I just didn't have that same freedom sort of thing. And now, like, what's happening is, you know, the Unity have got Open Call, like Homotopia's got Queer Core, Temesis do Wicked Women.
Yeah.
So many different outreach things going on, I think, probably as a result of the pandemic, largely as well. Obviously, everyone's got YEP and things like that. And it's just nice to see places collaborating and supporting those people who, you know, maybe wouldn't, you know, have it in their school where they do a school play that's, you know, does like a proper big school play or whatever. And I think that's really important, and I really hope that Liverpool continues to improve that, because we definitely have got a long way to go as a city. Like, there's so much racism still, there's so much homophobia, transphobia, like all of the obias and isms that we don't like. It still exists, and I think that the art is a really good way to tackle that, and to, you know, go out and meet people and invite them in with open calls and things like that, and not have those restrictions there.
Definitely, because I think that's what's beautiful about all four of your work and the work in the wider programme, was it was telling stories that would usually previously be underrepresented or undertold, I guess. And I mean, I, as well as enjoying the programme, I also learned a lot, I think, about the artists in the city and the stories that they want to tell. And yeah, I think that's been one of like the most beautiful parts. So just quickly to wrap up then, a double question for you all. What are you currently working on going forward, and do you have one bit of advice for anybody who wants to apply for Open Call 2022? So I'll start this way and we'll go this way around.
So I'm currently working on a further draft of the play that I had the rehearsed reading of. So I'm hoping to send that out to sort of competitions and stuff like that. And my piece of advice, I think, would be to just go for it. Yes. Like, I think that's what I think that's always the thing with those kind of applications, is you're like, oh, should I? But because of the ease of doing that first step, and because you get paid to do the second, I just think you should just go for it.
Amazing.
I was trying to think when Tom was talking.
You can all have the same one, it's okay.
So I'm currently working on a piece with my daughter called Siren Song, which is due to be on in June here. So I'm in the midst of looking through an Arts Council application. So that's me and Hope are performing it as well together, which is gorgeous. And with the Open Call programme, obviously, imagine like, no, don't go for it. Go for it. But even if you're a bit apprehensive or whatever, it's like come into the building, like, you know, when we do like the writers salon and all these different events, and you can just come and sit and chat to you guys, or send you an email, or because everything's constructive, whether or not you sort of get programmed or the funds in, just to create that conversation, and then you can be pointed in the right direction of sort of where to go from there.
Thank you.
Was it what working on now?
What are you working on?
Sorry,
Well,
I was like so engrossed.
You've still got your show to come, so it's a difficult question. It's a tricky question.
So me and Jess are working on our show Touch, which is obviously going to be on with you guys in April at the Unity, and we've which is all about kind of like, it's a verbatim research piece about how people forge connections and experience loneliness and things like that, but there's, you know, fun bits in it as well. So yeah, we're working on that. We've also got another piece called Nightlife, which is about queer nightlife as a space and things that so we're going to start developing that soon, a bit further. And in terms of advice, I think just sort of echoing what everyone else has said, but like about that imposter syndrome, what you said before, like imposter syndrome limits you from doing so many things, I think, and if you can just push through that and really like sit in your idea, sit in your project, and like just get it out like as thoroughly and as, you know, passionately as you can, then that speaks for itself. And I think, you know, don't let that lack of experience maybe, or that, you know, lack of, I don't know, previous connections, whatever, put you off.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Sian?
So I'm still working on Sian Davies About Time, which is the show that I did for the open call. It's going to Leicester Comedy Festival this weekend, and then it will be going up to Edinburgh in August. So that's sort of all, it's kind of picking up where it left off when the pandemic hit, really. So I'm really excited about that, sort of in the sort of process of planning the posters and all of that, and I've got my venue sorted and everything. I'll also be taking up the 2 shows that I take up every year, which are Comedy Queers, which is a queer showcase that I do, and Best in Class, which is a crowd-funded profit-sharing show that basically supports working class comedians to be part of the Edinburgh Fringe. So I'll be doing them. I'm also working on a new show with support from Homotopia, which is called This Charming Man, which is a stand-up show about role models and heroes and gender identity and Morrissey and paedophiles.
Yeah.
Well,
So stay tuned for the jokes on that.
Amazing. Well, I'm going to bring it to a close, if that's okay, by thanking you all so much for your kind of honesty, your generosity, your time, and also for being a part of Open Call 2021. As much as it was about us trying to provide income for artists, we have learned an awful lot as an organisation, getting to know the artists of Liverpool, and you know, we really admire and respect how you have dealt with everything that's come and gone, and you know, it's really inspiring to hear what you're doing next, and we are so grateful for the lessons that you taught us, and you know, we're looking forward to supporting you and what you do next, because we're kind of very proud to have had you as part of our programme and our first Open Call. And so I'm just going to finish by telling you a little bit about Open Call 2022. So applications are now open. You can apply with all manner of projects, whether you're working on a new show, whether it's a show that you had in development and that you'd like to give it a new life, whether it's a script in hand piece. It can be from all manners of genres. You can also apply for space to rehearse if you just want to have a chance to play around and have some fun in a theatre again and test those new ideas. And also you can apply with any kind of creative experience project. So whether it's a workshop that you'd like to do in a school, a Q&A panel, a discussion, something out in the city. We're open to all manners of creative projects, and crucially, we're really keen to hear from people right the way across Liverpool. So please don't worry if you've never even heard of Unity until you've happened to have stumbled upon this video today, or if you've never had any engagement with the arts before. This is open in so many ways. It's not just an open call in the sense that anyone can apply. We're also open to all of your questions as well, and there's many ways that you can ask us questions about how to apply and get support with that. So please visit the website and check out the links at the end of the video for applying. We'll also pop in some links at the end to hear more about the work that these guys have got coming up. And thank you so much for joining us for Roundtable.